You've probably had this moment. You eat something you shouldn't have, or maybe stress hits you out of nowhere, and suddenly you feel off, shaky, sweaty, foggy. Your heart starts racing and you just know your blood sugar is too high. And the scary part is, when that happens, your brain doesn't work right. You're supposed to make good decisions, but your body is already in panic mode. That's why today matters. Because this isn't about perfect numbers or long-term diet plans. This is about what to do when your blood sugar is high right now and you need it to come down safely. Look, here's the thing. A lot of people think there's some magic trick to drop blood sugar instantly. And that's where the internet goes off the rails. There is no miracle move that fixes everything in 2 minutes. But there are real, research-backed ways to help your body use glucose faster. And when you understand how they work, you stop feeling helpless. You stop just sitting there waiting and hoping nothing bad happens. You actually have something you can do. Let me tell you about Robert, because his story explains this better than any chart ever could. Robert was 68, type 2 diabetic for over a decade. Most days, he did okay. He took his medication, watched his carbs, checked his sugar. Usually he was in that not perfect but acceptable range. Then one afternoon, his daughter brought over homemade apple pie. His favorite. He knew better. He really did. But he also didn't want to hurt her feelings. So he had a big slice, with ice cream. 30 minutes later, his hands started shaking. Not a little tremor, full-on shaking. He started sweating through his shirt. His vision felt fuzzy, like someone turned down the contrast on the world. He made it to his bathroom and checked his blood sugar, 340. He just stared at the meter. His brain went straight to worst-case scenarios. Stroke, coma, hospital. And here's the part that stuck with him. He knew high blood sugar was dangerous. He knew he needed to bring it down. But he had no idea how to do that without waiting for medication to kick in. So he sat there, alone, scared, waiting. That's what most people do. They wait and hope. Now compare that to what happened a few months later. Another big meal, another spike. This time he knew what to do. He didn't panic. He used a combination of simple techniques that help muscles pull sugar out of the blood. And within about 20 minutes, his numbers were down to a safer range. Same body, same diabetes, totally different outcome. The difference wasn't luck. It was knowing how the body actually handles glucose. Here's what most people don't realize. Your muscles are like giant sponges for sugar. When they work, they soak glucose out of your bloodstream to use as fuel. That's not a theory. That's basic physiology. And it's why exercise is one of the most powerful tools for blood sugar control. But when your sugar is high and you feel terrible, you can't always go for a long walk or hit the gym. So the real question becomes, how do you get your muscles to use sugar when you're stuck at home, in a car, or at work? One of the simplest tools is controlled muscle tension combined with slow breathing. It sounds boring, but it works for a real reason. When you tense a muscle and hold it, that muscle needs energy. It pulls glucose from the blood to get it. If you just tense and release quickly, not much happens. But if you hold the tension for about 20 to 30 seconds while breathing slowly, you force that muscle to actually use sugar. You can do this sitting down. Tighten your thighs. Hold, breathe slowly in and out. Release. Then do your arms. Make fists, tighten your biceps, hold, breathe, release. Then your core, like you're bracing for a cough. This doesn't replace medication, and it's not a cure, but for mild to moderate spikes, it can help bring numbers down in a practical way. I saw this work with Dorothy, who was 71 and out to lunch with friends. She ordered something she thought was safe, but the sauce was loaded with sugar. Half an hour later, she felt shaky and checked her glucose. It was in the 260s. She couldn't just leave the restaurant. So she went into the bathroom, sat down, and did slow muscle tensing with her legs and arms for a few minutes. When she checked later at home, her number was much lower than she expected. Not perfect, but safer. And that meant she didn't spiral into fear. Another tool that surprises people is cold exposure, specifically cold water. When you drink very cold water, your body has to warm it up. That takes energy. And guess where that energy comes from? Glucose. There's research showing cold exposure can increase glucose uptake by tissues because it raises metabolic demand. Now, this is not about torture. This is about drinking a glass of cold water when your sugar is elevated and you're dehydrated or overheated. It works best when combined with movement or muscle activation. William, who was 69, used this one night when he woke up feeling awful. He thought his sugar was low. It was actually high. He drank cold water, then did light muscle tensing. Over the next 20 minutes, his numbers started trending down. Again, not magic, just physiology. Then there's vinegar. And yes, this one actually has solid evidence behind it. Acetic acid, the main component in vinegar, has been shown in multiple studies to reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes and improve insulin sensitivity slightly. It slows how fast food leaves your stomach and how quickly glucose enters the bloodstream. That's why vinegar works best as prevention or for moderate elevations, not emergencies. Mixing 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar with water before or after a high-carb meal can blunt the spike. Thomas, who was 68, tried this after a big wedding meal. His sugar was over 300. The vinegar didn't drop it instantly, but over the next hour, it steadily came down instead of staying dangerously high. That matters. Walking is still one of the most powerful tools we have. But here's where it gets interesting. Interval walking works better for sugar than slow, steady walking. When you alternate between faster and slower pace, your muscles switch between energy systems. That increases glucose use more than just strolling. Patricia learned this the hard way after a pancake breakfast. Her sugar was high. She walked fast for 30 seconds, slow for 30 seconds, over and over for 10 minutes. When she checked again, her number was down much more than on days she just walked normally. Now let's talk about something that sounds strange, but actually connects to the nervous system. Pressure points. There's limited but growing evidence that certain nerve-rich areas, when stimulated, can influence glucose regulation through the autonomic nervous system. This is similar to why stress and relaxation affect blood sugar. Vincent, who was 72, used this on a long car ride when he couldn't move much. He pressed specific points on his wrist and leg and focused on slow breathing. When he finally checked his sugar later, it was significantly lower than expected. Was it all the pressure points? Probably not. It was likely a combination of reduced stress, mild muscle activation, and time. But it gave him something to do instead of just sitting in fear. Now here's where things get really important. None of these methods replace insulin or prescribed medication. They are tools. Think of them like a fire extinguisher. You still want to prevent the fire, but if it starts, you want something to grab right away. And that's where a more intense muscle contraction method comes in. This is not for everyone, and it's not for people with serious heart disease or uncontrolled blood pressure without talking to a doctor first. But it's based on the same principle. Muscles pull sugar out of the blood when they work hard. When you do a very strong muscle contraction for a short time, your muscle cells rapidly demand glucose. Studies on isometric exercise, like gripping or pushing without moving, show it can lower blood sugar because muscles take up glucose even without insulin. That's huge. It means your body has a backup system. James discovered this sitting in his car after a buffet meal. His sugar was extremely high. He squeezed the steering wheel as hard as he could for about 20 seconds, then relaxed and breathed normally for a minute. He did that several times. When he checked again, his sugar had dropped more than he expected. Over the next 15 to 20 minutes, it kept coming down. Why does this work? Because intense contraction creates an energy demand. The muscle can't wait for insulin to do all the work. It opens its own glucose transporters and pulls sugar directly from the blood. That's well established in exercise physiology. This doesn't mean you should hold your breath and strain like you're lifting a car. It means controlled effort, short duration, followed by rest. Grip something firmly. Push your palms together. Press your hands against the arms of a chair. Engage your arms, shoulders, and chest. Hold for about 15 to 20 seconds while breathing normally or with very brief breath holds if your doctor says it's safe. Then relax fully. Repeat a few times. And here's the part nobody talks about. The psychological effect is just as important as the physical one. When people feel they can do something, their stress drops. And stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline push blood sugar higher. So simply taking action instead of panicking can already help bring glucose down. Let's put this together into a practical plan. If your blood sugar is above 220 and you feel bad, the first thing is don't panic. Sit down. Take a few slow breaths. Then choose what fits your situation. If you can move and it's safe, walk with intervals. If you can't, use muscle tensing. Drink water, preferably cool. If you have vinegar and tolerate it, use it. After 10 to 15 minutes, check again. If it's still high, repeat a safe method. If you're vomiting, confused, or your sugar is over 400, that's not a YouTube situation. That's a medical emergency. Call for help. Now let me be clear about safety. If you have severe heart disease, advanced kidney disease, or uncontrolled high blood pressure, intense muscle straining may not be safe for you. Always talk to your doctor about what level of exertion is okay. If you use insulin, these techniques do not replace it. They can support your body while you wait for medication to work, but they don't cancel the need for it. What changed Robert's life wasn't just the drop in his number. It was the drop in fear. The first time he had a spike, he felt helpless. The second time, he felt in control. That's huge. Living with diabetes means you need to be your own first responder. You need tools that work with your body, not against it. You need to understand why they work so you trust them. And here's something that might surprise you. Practicing these techniques when your sugar is normal can make them work better when it's high. Your muscles become more efficient at using glucose. Your brain learns the pattern, so when you need it, you don't freeze. You just do it. If this changed how you think about blood sugar spikes, hit subscribe, because this channel is about real health science you can actually use. No miracle cures, no scare tactics, just practical tools that make your life with diabetes less frightening and more manageable. Share this with someone you care about, because chances are they'll face this moment too. And knowing what to do could be the difference between panic and control.